Good afternoon and welcome to Tab York Live. I'm Elliot Rich and I'll be interviewing another prominent business leader from the York business community this afternoon. I'm delighted to be joined by Emma Whiting. Emma is one of the co-founders and partners of Talk Law in York. Delighted to see you today, Emma.
Good afternoon, Elliot. Good to speak with you.
Great, lovely to have you here. Emma, we've got a very important, a very serious topic on the table today, as you can see on the banner, about understanding the impact of domestic abuse affecting our workforce. So we'll come to that in just a few moments. But perhaps for everybody who's listening and tuned in today, you can just tell us a little bit more about Talk Law.
Sure. So Talk Law is an employment law firm based in York. We just do employment law. We've been going now for just under 5 years, actually. So myself and Tiggy Clifford founded Talk Law back in 2016. In the 5 years that we've been going, we've now grown to a size of 9. So the last 3 recruits were recruited in the last 12 months. So we're on quite a growth trajectory. And so we're now the largest employment law firm in North Yorkshire. So in terms of what we do, for the most part, we act for employers and we advise them on sort of individual employment issues, all the way up to sort of large scale restructuring and everything in between. We also act for lots of senior executives, director levels, looking to negotiate their exits. And the last 12 months has really been dominated by getting our heads around furlough and job retention schemes, new and evolving concepts which we've been grappling with for our clients.
Absolutely, thank you for that quick intro, Emma. I mean, Talk Law have provided a super service and support to business owners and leaders throughout the community, and I've certainly been reading and following all your tips and advice, so thank you very much on what has been a very difficult year. This topic today is obviously a very sensitive topic, and one of the questions I wanted to put to you to sort of start off the interview. I mean, employers have had a lot on their plate at the moment, and I'd like to understand why it is important that employees consider their responsibility towards the vulnerable employees. So that's the first question for today.
Sure, yes, and you're absolutely right. It is a sensitive subject, but it is one which is sort of rising up people agenda in organisations. We know that from the organisations that we're advising, and we're seeing that a lot. Domestic abuse and protecting vulnerable employees has always been a workplace issue. There's nothing new here, but really it's been brought to the fore by the pandemic and the enforced movement to home working. I think it's really been brought home to me that work and the office was actually a refuge for a lot of employees, and we didn't necessarily recognise it as such. However, that was very much brought to the fore when we were enforced into a home working pattern during the lockdowns. And we know that Refuge, the charity, its helpline was just inundated with calls, visits to its website rose exponentially. And the figures and the case numbers around domestic abuse are just horrifying. So we at Talk Law, we're in a privileged position that we are able to undertake campaigns and raise awareness with our employers, because we have unique advisor role, and we really wanted to promote this as an important topic for discussion within an employer context. The fact is that employers have legal responsibilities to their employees to create and provide a safe workplace. And to look at that, and that isn't new, that's always been the case back from the 1970s, but what that means in practice evolves. As the pandemic, that's forced employers to look at hygiene, workplace, social distancing, all those measures. But for vulnerable employees, it can mean looking at things like your risk assessment, because we do know a lot of employers now are looking to bring employees back to the office. Others aren't. Others are very much embracing agile working, wanting to work from home. Employers need to think about vulnerable employees in that force planning and looking at the risk assessments, because it might very well be that for your vulnerable employees, bringing them back to the office is absolutely what you need to do, and have an open mind to be doing that and have them at the front of the agenda, because employers do have a responsibility to provide that safe of work, but also these issues can throw up discrimination issues. They are very sensitive, so individuals who are vulnerable, who are suffering domestic abuse, will often have poor mental health. That may of itself result in poor performance, change in attitude and behaviours, and if you don't approach matters in a sort of open-minded fashion, there is a potential for risk and claims attaching to very much a sort of knee-jerk response to a drop-off in performance or change in behaviours. So having vulnerable employees, possibility of domestic abuse, talk about it, encourage people to make disclosures is really, really important, both from a legal and also from a moral perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, as employers, we have such a sense of responsibility for everybody, particularly from the last year. And when we're talking about a sensitive topic such as we are today, it's so important to get this right. Absolutely, it is. So perhaps for everybody as well, my second and final question to you is really about top tips. I mean, we're obviously keen to know what your top 3 tips would be for employers wanting to put measures in place to support employees who may be suffering domestic abuse.
Well, there's we'll look at 3 top tips, but there's endless steps that employers can take in this area. But we like our top 3s here at Talk Law. So in terms of top of the pops, my top tip would be around awareness training for line managers. These are your eyes. Your line managers are your eyes and ears as far as the workplace is concerned, and they're often the people who either receive the information, the person to whom the disclosure is made, or they're the people who really know that something is going on. If somebody's turning up and perhaps they may have bruises, that there are some telltale signs, some obvious telltale signs, and some more subtle signs as well. So are employers, line managers, equipped to have these conversations? Would they know where to point or signpost a member of staff who are very sensitive matters such as this? So having that confidence and equipping your line managers in this area is really, really important, and not being afraid to do that. So we often, we always say the employers who do best in this area are those who invest in their people, and I think that is, awareness training on this and other matters is obviously quite important. Secondly would be introduce a domestic abuse policy. There are such things, and employers are introducing, and have a repository of information on your intranet, something that employees can access, which will signpost them to support groups, perhaps helpful apps, things which will help them along the road to recovery. So having those accessible materials built around a domestic abuse policy is really important. And then finally, I would also encourage employers to make a fund available, so financial means available to employees who are the victims of domestic abuse, which can often include an element of economic abuse and sort of controlling behaviours. Because often one of the barriers to people sort of moving on and moving out is the financial constraints. Where will that money come from? So if they're able to access those funds from their employer, and there to be some sort of repayment schedule through salary deductions, then that often will be a really pivotal and important aspect of the support that an employer could provide to a member of staff who's vulnerable and struggling. As I've said, those are sort of my top 3. There are lots of other tips that I could have mentioned, and I guess the final point I wanted to mention was just sort of my own signposting. Actually, was we have partnered with a fantastic organisation called the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse, which is a membership organisation for large and small businesses, and it's free to join, and members of that organisation can access toolkits, including, for example, domestic abuse policies similar to the ones that I just mentioned, and a whole source of helpful materials. So Elliot, I think you might have details of that organisation and the website. Thank you.
There you go. One I prepared earlier.
For sharing that. But I'd really recommend anybody who's interested in this area and perhaps in an HR capacity wanting to raise their own awareness about what help and support is out there. That is a very, very good starting point. And we're members of that organisation, and a number of our clients now have also joined that organisation and are starting on their sort of journey towards encouraging and helping and sort of raise awareness in this important area.
Lovely. Thank you, Emma. I'll leave that whilst we close today. I'll leave that website up for anybody who wishes to take note and contact them and make further inquiries. But being such an important and sensitive topic today, I think really the key here is to speak to people like yourselves. If you are concerned, you know, it's not even if you've identified the issue, it's being prepared before the issue arises, making sure you've taken every step possible. And I know you and Tiggy and the fantastic team at Talk Law would be delighted to hear from anybody who you could support in this capacity.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here and very happy to help.
Okay. Emma, thank you so much. That's all we have time for today. Lovely to see you. Hopefully the weather will hold for us. It's been pretty torrential so far in May, but let's hope for a brighter May in so many ways, both at work and obviously with restrictions being lifted. We all need to be safe, and we all need to make sure that we take those extra precautions. So Emma, thank you so much for joining me today from Talk Law. That's all we have time for, but please follow my LinkedIn feed where I'll be posting today's interview and details of the next Tab York Live, which will be coming in the next few weeks. So have a great week, and thank you very much for listening. Bye now.